Okay, well, it is just about 7, so let's go ahead and get started. If we can have a roll call, please.
Maria Ryan,
Here.
Bart Bartles,
Here.
Todd Rusk, Andrew Stump, Rachel Valenga, Stephen Wald, Ryan Waldver.
Here.
All right, looks like we have a quorum, so let's move forward. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Okay, let's move to the minutes from the previous meeting. Let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor and then see if there are any changes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our last meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Let's move to public input. I know we do have a group here today of students who are working on the Georgetown Energy Prize effort. So if you'd like to come forward, and I would like to, because usually we limit public comment to 5 minutes, but I know they have a bit more than 5 minutes worth to talk to us about. So I'd like to ask for a motion to allow them as much time as they need for their presentation. Is there a motion?
I will move that we allow them as much time as they need for their presentation.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, if you could come on up and let us
Maria,
know your-
I'll introduce them too.
Great.
This is Sage Johnson and Saba Manetti Tesafaya. And they are some student leaders who, as you mentioned, have been very interested and actually brought to us information about the Georgetown University Energy Prize. And they've been working on some strategies to get more action going in the schools and household energy efficiency areas, and they wanted to talk to the commission about that tonight.
Great. Well, I'm happy to hear from you.
To explain what we're doing. Am I audible? To explain what we're doing, we have been working with why am I forgetting your name? We've been working with Susan Parenti to show off a play that she and some other people at the School for Designing a Society have written, that it's still in progress, and the idea is that we will show this play to the community to encourage them to reduce their footprint, and we hope that you people here at the Sustainability Advisory Committee will help us in our effort. And we've also been working with Danielle Chenoweth to organize this community event. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
And the idea is that we're going to work with the community and encourage them, not by saying that you have to do something, but just by gentle pushes in the right direction. And we're going to work with schools, and we are thinking about doing house parties to, work in a neighborly manner with the community directly. And we have a sign-up sheet here for anyone who is interested in being involved in hosting house parties, or otherwise. You don't have to host a house party. You don't have to volunteer your house to help. But it's here. If you'd like to sign up, I guess. Would anyone like to sign up?
Sage and Saba, can you talk a little bit more about the play?
It's called Pester Power. That's an important part. It was written by Susan Parenti at the School for Designing a Society, and she's the director of the play, of course. And we've been combining the issues in a hand-in-hand manner, I guess, to address both environmental climate and racial climate at the same time, to make sure that both pressing issues are addressed at the same time. Yeah, pestering. Oh yeah, it's also for adults. The idea is that we're pestering adults, and the idea is that it's a 25-minute performance performed by us kids mostly, for you adults mostly, as it says in the script at the beginning. Is there anything else you'd like to say besides laughing?
Can you talk about how the house parties come into play?
We want, since this is something that we're not forcing anybody to do something, we want to encourage people to, help, and just to, by by communicating with them directly in their house, because you can't do that, on television.
So you'd
Like
host
we
the play in different people's houses as well as other community events, right?
That's the idea. We've been planning, potentially doing it at the farmers market or the library, or one of many public. Oh, in schools, yeah. We're going to travel to schools. I think I said that.
Can you tell us again why you want to do it in people's houses and what you hope will happen at the house parties? What will come as a result of having this house party and seeing the play and engaging with people this way?
I hope that if people are together, then they'll work together to accomplish the goal instead of just kind of being off in their own little world, trying to do the best they can. But there's not much you can do if you're not connected as a society and as a community.
And then, what about in the schools? What are you hoping to do in the schools? How do you want to engage there?
In schools, we're hoping to engage the students in talking to their parents and doing things themselves, and talking to their schools and their teachers and principals to rethink their choices, and for themselves, the students, to rethink their own choices about, especially concerning the environment and other things that affect the community here in Urbana and the society.
I think this would be great to have at the library, as I know you both from the library. And the library is also set up for UPTV because of having the library meetings televised. So maybe we could look into that as well. So it could be televised.
We would love to do that. We'll talk to Susan and Danielle, make sure that can happen. Is there any other comments on our commenting?
Are there any other questions for Saba and Sage?
I just have a comment that so I'm really excited about ideas like this and these kinds of approaches because there's making changes in people's homes, making improvements in a broad-based way, a climate impact in people's homes and in their transportation choices has been, I think, historically a really difficult challenge, because people are, so we can deal with public sector and commercial and industrial sectors in a lot of different ways, because we can aggregate them, and because a lot of times they tend to be large, and people collectively are a huge impact, but we're all dispersed. And then I guess also another thing is that just around this area of interest and study, not just in this community but in communities all over the place, it's been a really difficult challenge to figure out how do we affect the aggregate of houses and people in a big way. And I don't know if this will do that, but I'm really excited as a social experiment to see if this is something that could work, and also just any kind of public process and any kind of gathering of people together around an issue, I think is a really big deal. And so I'm looking forward to working with you all and helping out however I can. So
Thank you.
Thanks really appreciate your stepping up.
We were also thinking if it was in houses, then it would encourage neighbors to get together. And then, as you're talking about, with a company or an organization, it's all glued together. But people and their neighbors, they aren't necessarily glued together as it would be nice for them to be, and that's one of the main reasons why we're doing house parties.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you very much. And we've got the sign-up sheet going, passing around, and we'll float that back to you as soon as it makes the rounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address us this evening? Okay, let's move along to communications and to the monthly staff report.
Good evening. First thing on the staff report, update on the Urbana-Champaign Energy Star Challenge. We are now at 62 buildings registered and 27 buildings that have submitted a 2013 energy benchmark. And also note that we got some earned media from WDWS. We had an interview over the phone with them. I didn't see if it aired or made it on their website. I checked their website. I didn't immediately see it, but it might have aired. I don't know if anyone else saw it. Maybe not. Also relevant to the Climate Action Plan, we worked with the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation last week to host an industrial facilities energy efficiency roundtable. That was at the BDG building, I believe it is the company name. It used to be the Easton Sports Equipment Company. They have a new name. They're right on 57 in Rantoul. And we had reached out to EDC working to take care of this industrial facilities task force goal in our climate action plan. As the event turned out, it was more, as it was implemented, it was more of a presentation about their building. It was a very energy efficient building, very large energy efficient building. And it turned into a presentation and a tour, which was valuable and interesting, but not exactly what we had in mind for that particular goal. But there's an opportunity for us to follow up with the folks who attended that meeting and do some surveying similar to what we've done in other sectors. So we're going to pursue that and hopefully still be able to check off that goal.
Scott, can you talk about the turnout and who showed up and how many industrial facilities were represented, and any plans for follow up with this group?
Sure. There was probably 15 people there. In some instances, 2 people from the same company. They were basically all from Urbana-Champaign and Rantoul. Lots of, I guess I would call it light industrial, light manufacturing facilities, similar to BDG. Some of them are, doing logistics. Some of them are doing actual assembly and that kind of thing. I don't have a list of, of the sign-in. 12 to 15. Yeah, it was a good turnout. Yeah, and so, I got an opportunity to talk about the Urbana-Champaign Energy Star Challenge, and what we're interested in learning about the energy efficiency in the industrial sector.
Is there a plan for follow-up discussions with that group? Do there seem to be interest among the people who are participating? And
I don't know if there's plans for follow-up discussions, but I have spoken with the EDC about some follow-up communications to at least get some more information from the folks that were there. So that may just be a survey. We can talk to them more if there's a opportunity for a continuing discussion.
Sure. Okay.
Next on the staff report, Climate Action Plan progress. Maria pointed out by email that the blue bar, the progress bar, should be 1 tick over both on the Climate Action Plan progress and the Water Management Plan progress. The percentages in both pie graphs are accurate, though. So part of the Water Management Plan includes monitoring the state's water quality report. It's referred to as an integrated report. And it's posted sort of mid-year. And if you remember when we went through this last year, they post their draft, and then US EPA reviews it like a year later and says it's okay, and it becomes a final. But everyone in the state just works off of the draft because it's that's the best data, and it's going to be approved by US EPA without any substantive edits usually. So there was recently a recent posting of that report, and so I did what I've done before, which is sift out just the information on the Urbana waters and put them in there. There were some new samples taken since the last report. This is every 2 years, by the way. There were some new samples taken for Urbana water bodies, but the results are essentially the same, and the impairments are essentially the same. If you have any particular questions on that report, I'll take them.
The Saline Branch was indicated twice on there.
2 different sections.
Yeah. So what were the 2 different? Maybe I just glossed over that part with the 2 different sections represented.
I think one is above where the boneyard enters the saline, and one is below.
Okay.
Andrew probably knows better. Does that sound right? All right. Some interesting activities going on with U-Cycle at this year's Sweet Corn Festival. Some of them we've done before. We've been doing recycling there. We've been doing corn cob collection for compost, working with the Landscape Recycling Center there, and we're doing more of that and hopefully better this coming year. I've mentioned before we got a grant to purchase Clearstream recycling containers. They have the simple wire frame with the clear plastic bag below. We also have a lot of volunteers this year that are going to help do communications on what is recyclable and what isn't, and where it goes, and so forth. So lots of good stuff there that we're going to be expanding. And then also, it also happens every year. Bicyclists, there's free bike parking there, and bicyclists will get a corn buck for a free ear of corn. So that's good incentive to ride your bike there. Also, a really great incentive is that it's just not going to be very much fun to park if you're attending Sweet Corn. So if you're in bike distance, it's a great thing to do. Next SAC meeting would be Tuesday, September 2nd, 7 p.m. Council Chambers.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Scott?
I just want to say I'm glad there's no styrofoam at the Corn
Yes,
Festival.
I did. Yeah, absolutely. All right. As long as we've got some communications going, I know I'd like to communicate one thing, that this is going to be Ryan's last meeting, and he's to be congratulated on a great new position that he's landed with Elevate Energy up in Chicago. And, very, glad to have had your service on the commission while you've been here, and we're going to miss you, but, certainly understand this is a great opportunity, so.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you guys over the last year. I know I haven't been the most talkative of my fellow commissioners, and so but I've learned a lot working with all of you. And if you're up for it, we can grab drinks later tonight potentially and commensurate. But I wish you all the very best moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other communications this evening? Okay, then let's move on to continuing business, the Climate Action Plan. And Scott, if you want to
Sure.
walk us through. And
Quick reminder of the tentative time frame we're working to follow. Again, if we're a month late, that's okay. It's a 5-year time frame for our next plan, so 1 month will be okay. We are in August, so potentially the commission could vote on a public comment draft, but doesn't have to be done this month. This month or next month, we may want to take a draft to the Planning Commission and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Following that would be public comment, and then Committee of the Whole, potentially coming back to the Sustainability Advisory Commission if Committee of the Whole has some edits, and then back to Committee of the Whole and City Council is what that should say rather than county. So what I thought I'd do is go through some of the edits that are different from the last meeting we had. I've been sending you multiple iterations, more or less weekly, but in case you've missed some of those, because they haven't been identified, as edits in the plan, you'd have to sort of notice them. So I thought I'd go through those, and feel free to stop me as I'm going. There are a couple points where I will stop and ask for input specifically, but feel free to stop me. Some of them I'm going to go through really quick. I want to mention them, but they're not terribly controversial. So page 2 was missing some photo citations on the cover. Page 4 went ahead and added page numbers, thinking that we're getting close. Those won't change too much. Page 5, under our understanding, third bullet point, there was a recommendation I got by email from some folks I was talking to at Prairie Research Institute, that instead of greenhouse gas reductions we undertake, it should read on how much greenhouse gas emissions reductions are undertaken, because not just we would be, so could be construed as Urbana, and we're not the only ones that have a responsibility here. So R is a little bit broader. On page 6, the first thing you should notice is that I've rearranged all of the actions, not to drive you crazy, but because I started doing the implementation table, and after arranging things in what seemed like a logical order, it seemed that the goals might as well also more or less follow that order, rather than being totally out of sync. So I've rearranged those. Apologies. Next thing, Maria had sent some comments about changing the verb, I guess, at the beginning of a lot of these. So some of them said, evaluate, and Maria proposed something like seek, propose, advance, some verb that is a bit stronger. So that's the first thing, and some of those I replaced, and then some of them I left as just bracketed word choice for us to discuss. And we can stop here and talk about that.
I had actually a couple of things. I think with the verbs, it looks like you had a couple of, that were outstanding under goal number 3. So for action 2, I wonder if we just go and say purchase green power partnership qualified renewable energy credits, or are we not ready to go quite that far?
Which
commit?
one?
It's goal 3, action 2. You've got the sort of word choices open there.
Oh, sure.
And then, perhaps for action 3 to say, just pursue long-term purchase of bundled renewable power.
I'm trying to think back of what the cost
Yeah.
implication was. We looked at that. Renewable energy credits for all city consumption. My recollection is it was somewhere around 20,000 a
Okay.
year. Just to let you know.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it's just, as affordable or something like that could be added into.
And then action 3, you had a verb.
Pursue long-term purchase.
Can we have the page up on the screen? I've
Sure,
reviewed this, but I didn't bring a copy with me.
And actually, while you're going through there, I also kind of had a a broader-based comment, both about this page and also towards the end of the document, where you've got the implementation table. That what you have on page 22 is kind of where you highlight there are actions that have significant impact, and so basically you've got 3 of those. But if I were somebody who is just kind of coming to this document, because there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to read the whole document, and I looked at the summary, I would think that these 5 goals here are where we're like the lever that we're pressing the hardest. But if just based on our previous discussions, and then it's on page 22, it seems like these are the ones that we're going to that we do want to work on because they set the right tone for things, but that this isn't really where we're going to get our most emissions reduction from, that it's really those actions that are outlined on page 22. So I'm wondering if this summary page could be revamped a bit so that what it does is it really kind of highlights that, there's, there are these actions that are going to have significant impact, boom, boom, boom. And then, there are these other goals that we still want to pursue that we think are important for other reasons and that kind of set the stage for the future, but, that are not necessarily going to be what's going to get us from here to there within our 6-year time frame to the year 2020. Does that make sense?
Yes. I imagine 2 potential ways to do that as a formatting question. One would be on page 6 to bold and increase the font size for the several items that are listed on page 22, and then maybe have a note at the bottom, why that is the case. Another way would be to get rid of these 5 categories altogether, and just start from the beginning of, actions of significant impact and other good public policies with a lower impact. And then we would carry that through to the later chapter where the goals are explained a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
The 5 categories here are not identical, but sort of following the lead of the first climate action plan. So they have some value there. On the other hand, identifying right from the get-go and throughout the document what has a big impact and what has a small impact also has value. So whatever.
I like the categories. I think it's a good way to for a person to look at it and organize. I think it's a good way to organize how these different actions relate to each other, and what if I'm looking at a number of different actions that are in a similar category, then I can think about them that way. And on the question of high priority versus actions that are not going to yield the immediate large results, maybe that is something that can be, I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. I don't like the idea of de-emphasizing some of the activities that don't yield immediate results, because I think those are some longer term activities that are going to help us learn things that we don't yet know that could yield to. So these are prospective activities. I think they're things that are. Everybody who's in this has a lot of things that they need to learn in the future, and so I think that should be high priority. We just don't know exactly what the quantifiable result is going to be. Anyway, that's kind of how I'm feeling about some of those.
I wonder if maybe framing it, in terms of, sort of initial higher initial impact and then longer term impact, kind of like separating categories, framing them that way rather than significant and we'll get around to it.
Yeah. I think any suggestion that one thing is significant and another, if anything is not significant, then it shouldn't be in the document. I think, and just I think I like that way of putting it.
Yeah, I would agree. You're talking about behavior change, and without changing the behaviors, or at least starting the behavior that change the behaviors, we're really not going to make a big difference over time. So I agree. It's important. I don't think I'd de-emphasize it either.
Maybe for the longer term goals, maybe use an asterisk or something beside it to identify that if we identify that goals are long term, short term, at least in the list of action items, you can maybe piece those out and maybe have a footnote at the bottom, something like that.
Okay, so keep the 5 categories, but identify or distinguish them into these 2 categories that we're talking about. Does that sound right?
I think so. I'll have to admit, when I was reading through, I wasn't necessarily mapping the actions from the 5 goals to what's highlighted on page 22. So I think anything that could kind of aid in that mapping would probably
maybe the same
help
color
too.
block.
Mm-hmm.
That might work.
Although you probably want at least one other visual cue for folks who are colorblind.
I guess it also gets to the, just the question about significance or potential for immediate impact. If we look at the whole category 4, adaptation itself will have zero or almost zero impact on our carbon footprint. But it's really important because we're going to have to figure out how to deal with these things. So I just wonder about calling them out. Introducing more categorization. I kind of, I wonder if a large proportion of the people who are going to be reading this can look at it and see, okay, well, that looks like, I don't know, maybe in the each action has a little section of its own, with some language about it. Maybe that's a place to indicate this is, this action we expect to have significant quantifiable impact in a very short term, or this impact, this is an adaptation strategy that is important, but it's not going to have an impact on our carbon emissions, or we don't expect it to. And there could be another one that says this is a longer-term strategy that that we hope will help us find more high-impact climate emission reduction strategies in the future. Something like that is one idea.
One way forward is that I can mock up a page or two and send it out to you, and let me know what you think.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say on the number 5, and I know you and I had a couple emails back and forth about, having, some kind of a follow-up for the SAC, and then you're saying, well, why don't we have that, be an action in that goal? But actually, as I was thinking about it further, I'm starting to think that maybe we might want to just separate out that. So it's Goal 5, Action 4 is what I'm referring to. The partner with the Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission, and then on the later page it talks a little bit about how we would have an inventory every other year and reevaluate every other year, and then start our planning process for the 2020 to 2050 timeframe. I almost wonder if that doesn't merit just kind of maybe just like a separate chapter, a separate section.
Yeah, you want a separate numbered goal?
Yeah, like it's because it's kind of more of like a follow up on, kind of what are we going to do once we've done all these different actions. Then kind of what happens, what's the monitoring, what's the yeah, exactly. So I'm just thinking maybe it's just like a separate entity.
There are a couple of notes, Maria, that you had that I didn't act on in the draft, and I can mention something about them as I go if you'd like. So before we leave this page, one comment says, the previous draft listed an action for this goal to engage commercial facilities to purchase and report green power. Don't we still want to do that? Yes, all I did was add it. I made that a bullet point under a broader goal rather than an action in its own right. So that's still there deeper in the document. Another comment says, also increase budgets for snow removal and for street maintenance due to more potholes from the more severe winter weather. And I think I have two responses to this about how I think funding for that type of thing and differences in funding these are going to go. One is we expect climate change to have some erratic behavior. So yeah, it's going to be sort of a general trend of more heat, but then you're going to have a winter like we just had, and then you have the potholes and the extra money for salt that we spend and that sort of thing. And if that happens erratically, say every 10 years or something, then I don't think you increase your budget forever, for all those 10 years, because once in every 10 years you're going to have more expenditures. I think you do what Urbana just did, is they just found the money somewhere else to cover that particular year. The other thought I had was something that a lot of the other agencies have said, which is if it's something that they're already doing, like say mosquito abatement, the pace of climate change is going to be such that it's a slow escalation in the service need, and they make budgets every year, and so that 1 year routine is probably enough to keep up with the slow change in climate change. If you don't agree, then we'll look at some language, but that's what I thought about it.
I was wondering if we could just touch on the third goal, the first action. Maria and I were both at a meeting last week, the environmental entrepreneurs in Bloomington, and in those presentations that day, they hit quite heavily on the unexpected outcomes of aggregation in that it's unexpected consequences on the renewable portfolio standard. And so they discussed it basically that the aggregation was moving long-term renewable energy in the state to short-term rec buying for the most part outside the state, and therefore decreasing the amount of renewable energy in demand in the state, almost putting it at a standstill for the next 3 years. So for that reason, I'm just wondering if maybe the verbiage of Action 1 under Goal 3 might need to be adjusted in some way for not this aggregation, of course, but I'm talking about in the future, to make sure, if the commission would deem worthy, make sure that renewable energy is actually added in the state.
So in-state only recs.
Right.
Yeah, it's just there's a price implication, but I appreciate the value that you're describing by choosing in-state recs.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that as far as greenhouse gases are concerned, it probably doesn't matter, although if you look at it from the job creation aspects and keeping the momentum going on renewable energy in the state, for me, I would choose to maybe put a qualifier on it and keep it in state.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a harder sell for the population if it's so significantly more expensive. I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
And it's very difficult to know how much more expensive. I mean, just theoretically, you would say if you're choosing to buy from a smaller market, the price is going to be higher than just buying the cheapest in the whole country. But our renewable energy credits that were the cheapest in the country doubled between one aggregation period and the next. So it's hard to say where the prices will be. But I think that there are lots of good arguments to be made about inducing new renewables in your own state and the economic development value of that. So if the commission is interested in amending that, we can do that.
One strategy for incorporating that could be, I think, like we've discussed for some of the other actions, where these actions up front are somewhat generalized, and so the idea is that these ones up front, right on top, have some flexibility, and they're not overly specified. They're specific but not overly specified, and so maybe there's room to add your comments as maybe a bullet point under the action when the part in the document where it addresses that more specifically on that action item, and that could include you talked about you talked about some of the unexpected impacts of aggregation. So maybe another sub bullet point is the commission will continue to look at research on the effects of aggregation and purchasing recs, but it still allows us to keep the action as incorporating the purchase of recs. But we can add these, some qualifiers, or maybe some things that are a little bit more in critique, or keeping it open to question. Maybe.
I would agree. I mean, I wouldn't put an absolute on it, but maybe including a preference if cost effective.
Okay. Also on this page, before we go, I think it's section 4, goal 4. There were some edits made to those actions where they're explained further into the document, and the changes were not transcribed out here, so they don't quite match up, but when we get to that section, we'll talk about the changes. Anything else on this page before we go?
Yeah, I just noticed a similar discrepancy with the Goal 2 pieces, but I assume we'll.
Yeah, there's two
Just
action
that later.
threes to consider.
Mhm.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I was just, yeah,
Okay.
so, right. Well,
Yeah, I just left it blank up front and
got it.
transcribe it later. Okay. On page 8, real quickly, added, let me go to that page here. Added 80% by 2050 to the climate action plan definition. Added some more detail to the LEED definition. Added some more description to what a TIF is. Added some more description to UC Energy Star Challenge. I think there was one here, Maria, that you had suggested adding some more content, and I can't remember which one it is. But I was trying to keep it to one page rather than 1 1/4. And also, all of these you could spend a lot of time on. So I'm just trying to make it brief. If anyone has more changes, let me know, and we can do that. Next page. Maria, you had asked whether there was more than 5 speakers on our climate impacts, and I only counted 5, but maybe I had Public Works, Sanitary District, Illinois American, Health Department, and the Midwest Regional Climate Center.
You know what, I think I'm probably blurring it with some of the folks who addressed us about the Sustainable Water Plan.
Okay.
I think that's why I'm thinking there were more.
And we had Power Company scheduled, but they sent some comments instead that didn't show. On page 10, there was just a formatting issue with the numbered items at the bottom, and that's fixed. Page 11 is a new graphic. Page 12 removed a reference to the Climate Action Plan Phase 1 under university-related emissions because it's really, well, the description there it addresses all the inventories for both phases, so it's not relevant to just have one phase listed. And then added this last paragraph, baseline inventory adjustments, to describe why the inventory is different for the same baseline year. Page 14, just a comma added to the 2013 column total. Page 18 is a new image. Let me scroll down for you, Todd. This could be faster. Page 20, there's no edit here. We had discussed whether it would be possible to go back to these cities' reports and see if we can get several of them onto the same year so that we would be comparing year to year, baseline to baseline. And they really don't have any more reports than what we've got. Most cities that have done one inventory haven't done a second. And I think all the cities, Kate helped me, she found all of this data the first time around actually and did a review on this. And I think no cities that had 2 reports had 3, right? So no more information to be had. Page 23 is a new image, and also that content was also spread on 2 pages before, and it got it all on one, so goal 1 is all on 1 page now. Page 24 is also a new image. The old image was also from LEED for Neighborhood Development. It looked nice, which is why I got it before, but when I looked at it again, it was really addressing prerequisites, and it really wasn't about what LEED is going to get you. It was about what's already on the ground and if you qualify. So this one's a little more about the design that you would have to follow if you wanted to take the existing context and make it LEED. Also, some edits in Action 2. It now reads, evaluate existing zoning and development codes for possible integration of LEED ND and other green development standards. We worked with community development and the planners there, and we talked about some different ways to take advantage of the LEED ND certification to get more energy efficient development or encourage energy efficient development. And the preference was not to try and make something new in our zoning and development and subdivision codes, but instead to look through the LEED ND standard and find some items of value that we could pull out and put into future revisions of our existing zoning code and subdivision ordinance. So action 3, there's 2 of them here. And Bart and I had talked about how we can get some more transportation-related goals in here. And what we're trying to identify was something that was measurable, like we would know if we accomplished it, but also achievable. And so 2 of the items that we discussed are here. The first one is reduce single occupancy vehicle mode share from 47%, where it is now, to 40%. I don't immediately have, I mean, there's a million strategies out there, right, to improve your, or move your mode share from one side to another. I don't immediately have any that are have a significant impact. So there's that. The next one says evaluate progress of bicycle master plan goal to increase bicycle mode share to 12%. So that's an existing goal in the bicycle master plan. And so this goal is, we need to check up on that. And then a bullet point, if we haven't reached it, we need to talk about, there needs to be discussion why and what we can do to reach that. Not that you couldn't have both, but they're related. The statistics here come from the American Community Survey, which has 2-year and 5-year estimates, or is it 3 and 5? 3 and 5-year estimates, and also the census, which is every 10 years. I observed, though, looking at that, I've got it printed out here somewhere. Looking at the American Community Survey and the category that they have for your bicycle mode share, it's actually taxi cab, motorcycle, bicycle, or other means, all rolled into one. So there's a lack of specificity there. There's also, I don't know if the margin of error is significant in this, but it's not. It's more modeling and less data collection than, say, the census is. So there's. Just want to make you aware of that. So that's up for discussion.
Could I follow up that transportation thought for a second? I know we've kind of kicked around the idea as far as EV charging stations, and I just thought I'd share a thought from this weekend. I went up to Wisconsin and came back down and pulled into a restaurant, and there were 6 Tesla supercharging stations, and I thought, wow, this is an odd place, but it was a destiny. And I have since looked into it a little bit, and Tesla was putting these things in just so you could drive one of their cars across the country without, running out of juice somewhere along the way. And because it's a supercharger, 20 minutes to get a 50% increase in the battery charge, and they go 265 miles. So it's getting there, and if the main concern is tax dollars putting them in, there might be options around doing that and having the private sector pay for it, and have a destiny right in Urbana to visit restaurants and the like.
Yeah, the city will certainly facilitate permitting and electrical connection if the cost was borne by someone else. I think we would be able to make that partnership easily. In terms of paying for the full cost, we've talked about that. I don't know if we've talked about it in the full commission or not. I know Bart and I have.
In the pub, I think we did. It was official, though. Yeah,
What's that?
No. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. We just kind of kicked it around. I'm not sure if it was in a formal meeting or afterward.
My recollection is somewhere around $10,000 after, maybe it's five, I can't remember, after the state rebate for cities to install publicly accessible charging stations. Some of the problems with it are if you own an electric car, you charge it just like you charge your mobile phone. You go to bed at night, you plug it in, and it's fully charged by the morning. All the electric cars go at least 40, 50 miles on one charge. I think it's 92% of American commutes are under 40 miles. So if you put in a publicly accessible charging station, are you really removing a barrier for Urbana residents to buy an electric vehicle? I'm not confident of it. So if you start thinking about, well, what commutes would this actually allow that otherwise it wouldn't allow? So now you're talking about someone who, say, lives in Danville but works at Carl. But the rebate money is for publicly accessible charging stations, not ones on a private parking lot. And is someone going to drive from, say, Danville, park on the street in downtown Urbana, and then catch a bus or walk to Carl? No, they'll just keep their existing car and they'll drive all the way. So when you start thinking about the different scenarios where it would actually induce or remove barriers to someone buying an electric car who otherwise couldn't, there's not a lot left. Now, if it's an economic development strategy, if there's some value there, that's fine, but it's an economic development strategy.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I guess I was looking at it as well, because they have the same charging stations in Normal, Aurora, Rockford, Chicago.
Normals were paid for by, who was it? Mitsubishi.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I'd love to be able to say we could, jump around and with EVs and not have to worry about, and at the same time drawing people in here to stop at our local restaurants. But
Sure.
That's just my thought.
Question, were any of the 6 in use?
No. No.
Just wondering.
But that was Wisconsin, It's not. They're a little bit behind. That was a barrier getting, I think, charging stations through Wisconsin there.
So we have 2 goals here to take a look at transportation emissions. Any thoughts on what's going to be workable for us?
I was actually wondering about, because you did mention a little earlier that the bicycle master plan goal, that action is related to the, reducing the single occupancy vehicle mode share. I wonder if we just have that, maybe that action 3 at that action level is that we reduce the mode share. But then we have a couple of sub-bullets under it that would include things like, we'd have one related to bicycle, the one that's here proposed as the alternate action. Maybe that becomes a sub-bullet. And then there's one related to electric vehicle use. There's one related to increasing bus ridership, one related to increasing pedestrian, so that maybe there's like 4 or 5 that fall under that action 3, 4 or 5 bullets under that action 3 that relate to some of the alternative modes of transportation that we would want to promote.
So the second action 3 is a bullet under the first, and also action 1, or no?
Can you move to that page?
Sorry. I should say the application for bicycle-friendly community is going to be turned in, I think, this month.
Yeah.
I don't know when we hear back, but it might be kind of moot. So we may want to think about, do we remove it, or do we say upgrade from wherever we are? Say again? We might get silver.
Well, unless we combine the two bicycle ones into a single action. And then just leave the mode share action as is, and then, that can be implemented by, obviously we have a number of different strategies we could follow. To achieve that action.
So an ND, a mode share, and then the two bicycle together.
On the single occupancy vehicle mode share, well, so you mentioned, there's a million possible strategies, and it's a really difficult one. And so, I see where, okay, so difficult to figure out, okay, how do we, what kind of programming do we talk about? And I want in the first phase, we there were some things where we felt like, okay, these are important, but we don't quite know how to do it, so we proposed working groups. And I don't know if this is something that merits a working group, or if there's people that would be interested in such a thing. But I just wonder if there's, I think this goal is, this action is an important one, and I wonder if maybe our strategy should be somehow pitching it out for public participation, to figure out strategies, because a lot of it is, I think we need to learn, well, why are people making the choices that they do? We don't really, I don't think we have, the surveys that we've done, they don't really talk about transportation choices.
There was one done by MTD called MePlan, or part of a document called MePlan.
Right.
That was pretty good, and we set aside doing any additional surveying with the first phase, because I think it was pretty good.
Well, then is that so then maybe the strategy is to to coordinate what there's all MTD is doing all kinds of planning and stuff, and so do we work with them to develop strategies?
Yeah, certainly if we're going to talk about increasing bus mode share, you would talk to MTD and work with them, because of course they're doing that all the time.
Mm-hmm. And just the long-term transportation planning process also.
Mm. Other thoughts on this section?
I actually, if you wouldn't mind backing up a couple of pages to page 22. I was thinking about, we've had I started thinking about this when I was looking at the energy efficiency and/or RECs in commercial sector or other sector, and then maybe we could add a bullet that would talk about adding an awareness or education campaign that was based on the results of the survey that was taken in the commercial sector, because it seemed there was a lot of just people either they hadn't thought about it or they weren't aware of what was available, and that might be something that we could add to that list. And then that kind of got me thinking a little bit about some of these other, task forces and surveys. And I'm wondering if we can integrate a little bit more of that. In particular, and I think I had something that was moving in that direction in some of my comments to you earlier. There was the recommendations of the rental task force.
Right.
And that could integrate, I think, into both the home energy and the energy efficiency for the commercial sector, because you've got both, residential rental and you've got commercial rental. And even with the residential rental, a lot of that gets metered as commercial because I think they, the larger multifamily units get metered that way. And I guess in particular, I'm thinking about, community where we've got 2/3 of households are rental. That has I think that probably, would have some legs to it.
Yeah, I think the apartments are metered
Mhm.
as residential, but they're treated as commercial by everybody else. So in terms of dealing with Act on Energy, that would be a commercial building. But in terms of our inventory, it would show up as residential. So I had saw that comment, and there's two main recommendations from the rental task force. One was to create one place to put all energy efficiency information that they would want to access. The other was to focus on tenant behaviors. The first one, putting all information in the same place, is proposing that we will get more action in that sector if people have the information. But we know from behavior change that information is necessary but often insufficient. Also, with the Urbana-Champaign Energy Star Challenge, we did that. We have a page, a resources page, where we have listed for our region all of the technical assistance available and all of the financial assistance available. So I think we could check that off potentially. I mean, maybe the Energy Star Challenge doesn't last forever, and we would want to port that data somewhere else if it goes away. But I think there's also a question of, is that really the barrier? Is that really going to move folks? The other barrier, focus on tenant behaviors. Tenants have some control over, they have control over a number of things, but not everything. So, for instance, the HVAC. So you're whittling down, with that strategy, you're whittling down what you can address. We did attempt a pilot test that would determine if magnets, refrigerator magnets, would induce people to set their programmable thermostat. That would be a tenant behavior. And we worked to get a couple of apartment owners from that task force to participate, and we had two that raised their hand. One of them turned out that none of their thermostats were actually programmable, so we couldn't do the pilot test. And the other has just been too busy with dealing with their business operations to carry through with that. So with that being said, we can look at bringing something into this.
I guess there's two thoughts that I have. One, as far as residential tenant, now this, would not necessarily hit all tenants, but it might be possible to partner with the tenant union to have some kind of, educational program. Certain, and we've got the two tenant unions. There's the student one on campus, and there's also the community one in Champaign. So, that might be a venue or a fruitful partnership. And then I think, the other, as far as the commercial tenants go, maybe, the Illinois Green Business Association is already, doing quite a bit. And, maybe, if there would be some ways to partner with them as well to, press on the kind of commercial tenant behaviors.
Do you think under building consumption goal or partner with existing programs goal? The tenant union isn't really an existing energy efficiency program. It's a sector
right,
based.
But it might be, but it might be
in that sense, it might make more sense under the goal 1.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I think either way, because with partnering, it depends on how broadly we want to define our partnering. Do we want it to be just partnering with where there's an energy focus, or just think of it more broadly in terms of partnering with organizations that can help achieve the goal, whether or not their primary mission is energy efficiency or not. I mean, certainly for many tenants, especially the ones who are paying their own power bills, that would probably be in line with, the tenant union mission. I mean, it's not that that's what the tenant union's mission is, but it would be, maybe a little bit more closely calibrated with it.
I think we can put something in there.
But I think in either spot would be fine, I guess.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying. And then of course Ryan can tell us all about the multifamily stuff when he gets up to Chicago. And one other comment that I did have on the material on page 22 would simply be in some spots you talk about who bears the costs that are listed, and then in other spots it's not necessarily specified. And I was just thinking in terms of a member of the public reading the document that it'd probably be good to give them a clear idea of, is this money that's coming out of their pocket, either as an individual or as a taxpayer? Is it money that's, coming from another source?
Yeah, I didn't highlight that in my copy. I made a small change. I had mentioned that in renewable energy credits because we had talked about it in a previous meeting. And then in below, I put estimated program costs for the next two categories. Maybe that's not explicit enough, but my thought was it's identifying that it's the program that costs $60,000, not what anyone else does. I don't know if that's clear enough.
Right, I guess, but who's paying for the program? Because the program could be paid for, out of any number of different sources. So if what you mean is that it's a city's program and the city would pay for it just to...
Well, I guess what I meant
Yeah.
was the program costs $60,000. Maybe the city finds that money out of general tax revenues, or maybe they find it from a grant. Either way, the program costs $60,000 rather than each individual household that participates.
I was just thinking in terms of, if I'm a member of the public and I'm reading this, is this money out of my pocket directly? Is this money out of, just the tax base? Is this, I was thinking more from a consumer perspective.
I have to admit that thought went across my mind as well when I was reading through it earlier. Just wondering whether that was taxpayer money or not. I imagine that's kind of the first question a public reader's going to ask.
And it may be unknown. I mean, as you say, it could
Right.
be out of general funds. It could be out of a grant. Who knows? Maybe there's private sector programs that could be tapped into as well. But
Yeah, there's no money set aside, so it's indeterminate whether it's tax revenue money or whether it's grant money. But I think Maria's question is, does the resident know that they don't pay $60,000? So do I need to be more explicit here then?
I think it would be helpful just to specify that, like just to put a line in that says something like possible funding sources would be, city taxes, grants, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Just so that it kind of gives a sense of where that funding would be coming from.
Okay. Mario, you had a comment also going back to page 23. Action 2. Can you give a specific figure of how much energy was saved per dollar and how that translated into reduced emissions? I have sort of the inverse figure. It's dollars
I
per-
realized that when I read it again. So, that
Yeah.
was user error on my part.
And then the next one, action 3, comment, how much impact would this have? Is the city planning any new facilities? The impact would be small. This is one of those in the category of it's good public policy. It pays dividends in the long run, but it's not going to bend the trend line a lot. And then the question is the city planning any new facilities? Not presently. We don't have any money set aside to do facility planning, although we are talking about facility needs. So I don't think it's imminent. Anything page 24 or back? Moving on to goal 3 then. This is where we had some of the verb changes as well. I think you had left a couple as evaluate, Maria. And we had talked about changing one of them.
Yeah, I think just when we were looking at this on page 6, I was suggesting that for action 2, just to change it to say purchase green power partnership, et cetera, pending affordability or.
Right.
And then for action 3, it was maybe to say pursue instead of evaluate.
Okay. Goal 4. I don't know if you made a note on this, but I made a note about word choice for goal 4 action 1. Encourage. I had it as a different, I don't remember what the different word was before. I keep changing it. What I really mean is send them a letter, because we're not going to make them do it. We just want to let them know that there are people out here that are interested in this. So I don't know how to word that. Request. Petition. Petition's a good word. And then, okay, so this is also the section where it did not get transcribed back to the summary page. So there's some new content here. I think Steve, in a previous meeting, had stressed the importance in terms of adapting with pollinators because they pollinate a lot of our food. And so we talked to the Arbor division about how we can craft a meaningful goal there. And what we came up with was incorporate pollinator supportive plant species in city landscapes. And the bullet is plant selections that provide food and shelter to insect pollinators can support pollination of both food crops and landscape plantings. And so the Arbor division challenged me to find some resources for them so that they can do this. I've found a couple good ones. We can share them with the commission if you're interested. And they have region, big region, but they have region-specific lists of plants that support pollinators. And gave that to the Arbor division, and turns out they're already planning a lot of those, so that's really good. But I think it's still worthy to put in here because it would keep the focus on that, and perhaps we can increase the proportion. Unlike trees, our landscape plants are planted every several inches, several feet. There's a lot more of them than the trees. So we have an inventory of all of our trees by species, but we don't really have an inventory of all of our plantings by species. It's probably not going to happen. The next goal, reduce tree species and tree genus preponderance to 5% and 15% respectively. We're actually kind of a leader in this area. We have a really great species diversity. And what we were talking about with Arbor was, what can we do in terms of adaptation around trees? Some trees are going to experience increased morbidity because of climate change. Some trees might do better because of climate change. And so the first thought was, well, let's plant more trees that typically grow farther south. But then think about last winter. Those trees might, every 10 years or whatever that, we have a cold snap, maybe they don't survive through that. And so we haven't gained anything. And so we kind of ended up right back to the strategy Arbor has had for years, which is just increase diversity and over time learn what survives and what doesn't. And they have the same strategy actually for the landscape plantings. It would be decades of research to try and identify which plants are going to be resilient to climate impacts in our particular area. And you'd only be studying, one or a genus or something. You wouldn't be studying all of them. So instead, just go with diversity, try to observe what doesn't work, and adjust that way. So any comments on those? This is a new graphic at the bottom as well.
Scott, I think the U of I extension could probably help you with the plants, the pollinator plants and other species
great.
that they might actually be doing their own tests with NRES or something.
Okay. Anything else on goal 4? All right, goal 5. The action 4 is new, but we talked about pulling that out and making it its own goal number. And that's a new graphic. Everything else, well, okay, the appendices page the cover page is new as well. What I'm thinking here is we would separate these as 2 separate PDFs on the website. So if you wanted the appendices, you could download it separately. If you don't, you get a document half the size. And they could be one document and the 2 separated as well. In any event, the idea was to offer people an abbreviated document if they don't need the backstory. And I think everything in the appendices was here last time. There's a place saver for public input. The implementation schedule is new.
And I was thinking on that implementation schedule to do something similar to what I was suggesting before with regard to those, I actually, now that we've had our discussion about it, it might not be as, I was thinking about, kind of highlighting some of the actions that we thought were going to have the most immediate impact, but I think given our discussion, we can probably just leave that lie. I did want to point out, though, for the action 4, and again, I mean, this one, is probably going to, it may end up being separated out because it's not necessarily going to be part of goal 5 anymore, but that the SAC work would need to start probably in, 2016 or 2017, because that would actually kind of start with our first reevaluation.
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to do the inventory and
inventory.
the reevaluation, every couple of years. only other questions I had in the appendices were just that there were a couple of the survey results that had like an other category, and it might be informative for us if you have the data available of like what the what kinds of responses people gave in that other category. On page 30. I don't know if you had anything else for us or if anybody had other comments for tonight. All right. Well, it looks like maybe we've got one more draft and we'll take a look at it next time. And
Sounds good. So bring us back to SAC one more time.
yeah, is that seem right?
I think it's probably too many edits to.
Yes, especially with some of the restructuring, you know,
Yeah.
probably want to see it once more. All right.
Can. Yeah, I can continue to send a revision every Friday until next meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be good,
Just the
just so
normal
that we
packet.
could kind of see, yeah, so we could have a
Okay.
little time to send you some comments before the meeting or something.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, let's move on to new business. Bart was going to talk to us about the Green Office Challenge.
There you go. Thanks. Yeah, my other hat. Tonight I'm here as the sustainability outreach specialist, I guess, for the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center. And one of the tasks that's been handed to me is rolling out the Illinois Green Office Challenge, which is really a game, a successful game that was played over the last few years in Chicago. And what this game does is it really tries to get office building occupants engaged in reducing waste, energy, and water. There are a few other aspects than that, but primarily the metrics are based around energy, water, and waste. So the idea there really is as a building signs up and participates, their activities, there's one person kind of in charge of logging in their activities from their group, and as they log it in, first of all, when they sign up and register, their name is added in on the website, and once they're there, they're really live on a scoreboard. So as activities are done, points are awarded, and as points are awarded, the building or the office building moves up this scorecard. So there's kind of an ongoing rivalry, if you would, or at least there has been in the past, including some social network back and forth about the differences in their buildings and the like. So it gets a little bit competitive. But because of that success, it's now being rolled out into Central Illinois. So this year, Champaign-Urbana, Bloomington-Normal, and Peoria are all participating in this. And at this time, we're looking for recruiting, basically, for the challenge. And registration will actually start on September 1st, with the competition beginning October 1st and running for 7 months after that. And then awards given out and recognition given out to winners in different categories at that time. So I just wanted to kind of briefly go over this, let you know about it, and kind of showcase maybe some of the results. Last year, the competitors in Chicago averaged an 11% reduction in energy usage, which is nice. And on this website, which is IllinoisGOC.com, so IllinoisGOC.com, right now you can just sign up. The sign up is just for more information. So any representatives of a building that are not sure whether you want to participate or not, click on sign up now. You just add in your contact information. We will keep you informed about the updates, and then when the registration time actually begins, that's when the activities website goes live, and you can sign up for the challenge if you wish. On here then there's my contact information, and on the website at the moment all we have is kind of the basics of the activities. So you can look at it, energy, purchasing, waste, transport, outreach, and water consumption. Of course, when the activities website goes live, there are different components and all kinds of strategies under each one of these, and points awarded for each activity. So it's something to kind of look at. And if I were to look at it from the perspective of a office building manager, owner, occupant in the city of Urbana, I would kind of look at it as kind of a stepping stone, really, to get started, get activities going, and perhaps in the long run end up going along the lines of IGBA and getting a Green Business Association certificate, if you want to go that far. But in the meantime, it's, well, to be honest, the most difficult activity on this board would be the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So all the participants in the Energy Star Challenge would really have the most time-consuming activity on the board already out of the way. So maybe it's a step from Energy Star Challenge to the Green Office Challenge to the Green Business Association. I think that's about all I want to share with you right now. If you do have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I would encourage you to head to this website and maybe forward it to anybody in buildings that maybe want to showcase or highlight some of the activities that they've done. Let me go back just a second to the metrics. In the metrics, we're looking at 2013 numbers on waste, energy, and water consumption, and then the competition, of course, uses the monthly numbers going forward in 2014 and comparing it to how it was done in 2013. So it can be a nice way to showcase some of the conservation efforts over the last year. And there is a lot of support involved, including free site visits. Several members of ISTC or CDAC or the Green Business Association. There's a lot of support out there. What we're trying to do is kind of collaborate with everybody and let them know all the efforts that are there and that can help, including waste audits, for instance. We did a waste audit not that long ago for a business, and they ended up identifying $10,000 worth of stuff in their garbage that they could sell and end up saving $70,000 over the course of a 12-month period. So sometimes it just pays to have the waste audited and analyzed to see if there's a better use, that kind of thing. Any thoughts or questions?
Is the basis for the score your improvement? Like, so you take a baseline in 2013 and your score is based on your improvement to 2014? Is that
On the
idea?
three, on those three activities that involve the metric, yes. But there are points awarded for activities that don't have metrics attached. The big numbers, though, come from the impact reductions, right?
If you could scroll down. So for these policy items and things like that, how do you plan on verifying that they're actually, or some of these soft changes, policy items, green team, how do you plan on verifying that they are actually putting those practices into place in the office?
Right. There's on the website itself, the first thing that's done, that item number 1, is really kind of an education. First, it's forming a green team. Secondly, it's an education of the green team. And under each one of those topics, what we kind of want everybody to know up front. And then there's criteria on creating the policy and whether they want. There's suggestions and guidelines of putting it together. There's also, of course, we offer help and consultancy should they want some assistance in putting it together. Or we could even send them over to you if you have time before you leave to help somebody out. But as far as following up with them and reviewing their policy for accuracy and that kind of thing, there's a bit of the honesty policy involved in some of these activities, definitely.
This is somewhat related to my first question, but I was thinking of was if you have an office that's already pretty green in its practices, there would be less, there's not as much room for improvement. So I'm just going to throw an idea out that, maybe there would be different classes of, like if you're, sort of the offices that are already doing green stuff could compete against each other as opposed to the folks who are, wow, this is all new. It's all new news.
It's funny you mentioned that because Chicago did exactly that. They split it up into 3 different categories, depending on where they were at the time, that kind of thing. And in breaking it up that way, there's a real advantage actually of somebody that really hasn't been on board yet. Of course, they have a lot more room for improvement, don't they? And they can move the needle a lot more than somebody that did all kinds of energy upgrades a few years ago, and the behavior change model is already in place, and they already kind of have all these policies. They're not going to move the metrics a whole lot compared to somebody that's, maybe making some changes right now and really weren't engaged until now. So you're right. And those groups will be separated in this. We'll know a little bit more specifically about how to separate the different groups when we kind of see who registers, because we want it to kind of be fun and a game and a competition for everybody. We don't necessarily want to set the categories in advance and have like one building in it, that kind of thing. So as soon as we see the volume and the variety of buildings that have registered, then we'll kind of launch. Before the competition begins, we'll be able to launch and let everybody know kind of what category they're in. But on the leaderboard, it's all one leaderboard. One thing to mention is that public or private sector buildings are welcome to participate.
So for this program, you're the main person operating it, running it, and then would you be the one conducting the what follow-ups there are and tracking all the information? You're kind of the one-man show for this?
I am, unless we'll see how fast the recruitment goes. We are cognizant of the need, if all of a sudden we have 100 buildings on board, then I'm going to need some help. So we definitely have a lot of intern potential
Okay.
in the area, and if things get behind, if support lags in any way, we'll be pulling interns in for all kinds of help.
That's excellent. Where I was going with that is I would encourage you maybe to outreach to interns now. I don't think you'd get this criticism, but from my experience running a certification program with the IGBA, it was brought up occasionally because I played a similar role as certification manager.
Right, yeah.
And
I value
so
your input.
there was seen at one point a conflict of interest for the person selling the program, myself, and then also verifying the rigor of the program. So it could, just to prevent future confusion, have interns, they are tracking this data, they are checking it, because as a person selling it, someone suspicious of the green movement may think you're trying to fluff the numbers or make it seem less rigorous to increase enrollment. So just maybe adding interns add that extra layer of quality control.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Was something we found that was necessary. Hopefully no one will ask. I doubt it, but it's just some thought you guys can chew on.
Oh, valid point. Thanks for bringing that up. I hadn't thought of that at all.
Yep.
Great. Anybody else? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements this evening?
I'm sorry, I forgot to mail it in. But Sierra Club is having a fundraiser for the Rails to Trails for the portion that goes from Urbana to St. Joe. And that is going to be Thursday, August 28th from 6:30 to 8 at Sleepy Creek Vineyards. There's going to be appetizers and a drink ticket. Minimum is $25 per person. Suggested is $50 per person or more.
How much are you trying to raise for that leg?
How much are they trying to raise, or how much are we trying to raise? We're trying to raise $7,500. There's a
Then
there's a
overall-
limit of 75 people for Sleepy
Okay.
Creek, and you can RSVP
Okay.
to me, and you can see it either on
then
local
do you know
Sierra
how much
Club's
money-
Facebook page or our website.
Okay. And do you know how much money?
It was in the
For the-
millions, but
Okay.
for every dollar that's raised locally, then the state is matching it through different grants. So that's why there's a big push to raise the money.
Other announcements? All right. Seeing no other business before us, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.